This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Randy.
Marty, I think before we start, we wanted to kind of outline that Marty's got a bunch of information that he is going to present first. And so if, council members, if you have any clarification questions based on what you're seeing, what Marty is presenting, we would invite you to just kind of interrupt and say, hey, what you have on the screen there, I don't understand. Can you clarify? And Marty can explain that. And then if we can hold discussion to the end after Marty's gotten through his presentation, then that'll allow him to get all of his material presented in the time that we have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marty.
Thank you, Jeff. For the benefit of the upcoming council members, can we explain what this is about?
Yes, and Marty will get into that.
Sure. Yeah. I have a slide deck here to walk through. And then from the slide deck, I've got a spreadsheet that I want to kind of share with the council and walk through elements of that spreadsheet. At the close of this, and then tomorrow morning, I'll send all of you the material that is contained in the spreadsheet, and then this memo that kind of explains to a reader how to read the spreadsheet and what you're looking at. So this slide deck is the first part of it, and then I'll get into a large spreadsheet that I'll kind of walk through some of the work that I've done with your staff to come up with a set of proposed fees for your land use applications and other related fees. So next slide, please. Hopefully I can get a next slide. Okay, yeah. So this is really kind of a two-part follow-up. Councilmember Williams, you mentioned that this is kind of the context of this. This is actually, we started 2 years ago before that, and we presented a report to the council in early 2020, just before all of COVID hit, and that was the assessment of building and development review permitting process. So that report was submitted to the council. That led to a second follow-up, which was to look at the city's building fees and consider revising the building fees to provide an update and an adoption by city council. That was done early in 2021. So from that body of work, we were directed to look at the land use application fees and other related fees that I'll go into. So next slide, please. So I'm going to kind of walk through the approach of our work, and then some of the components of the work. So we did review your current fees that you have adopted, and the previous financial consultant findings that you had when Mr. Paul Lewis was working for you. That's actually, there was a body of that work in the report that was issued a couple years ago. I did work with your staff and the outside consultant to determine the effort and the time of review for about 40 different applications, ranging from what I call developer-focused applications, for example, subdivisions and site plans and rezones, to what I call more residential-focused applications, like minor and major home occupations, signs, tree removal, etc. Also looking at an approach to determine any options for streamlining these minor land use permits or related miscellaneous permits to include use of simple checklists or code amendments from your La Center Municipal Code. Fourth on this approach list is that we review assumptions of either fully or partially cost recovery policy. That is, whether you set a policy to recover costs incurred by staff time or outside consultant time. Now, I've got a note here that the actual costs of processing applications and conducting substantive review is difficult to estimate, as many projects require outside consultant review. So the actual costs, I've kind of put a definition to, which is the city application costs to cover staff time, plus any fees recovered in a cost recovery agreement from your outside consultant. And that's done apparently by the consultant WSP putting together a scope of work for a particular application. And then as the work is processed and there are some adjustments to when the final report is due, there might be a plus or minus, and then your consultant provides you a final invoice, and that's paid by the city, which then is a pass through to the applicant. That's my understanding. So that's the approach of looking at these land use fees. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hopefully there's not a glitch. Okay, so when I walk through the spreadsheet, which I'll share with you after this slide deck, there are several components to the spreadsheet, and it's really kind of laid out by columns and rows. You'll see your current fees, and then we look at the staff hours spent in review for various applications. One column has a list of proposed fees to charge to recover costs incurred by staff only. So these do not include outside consultant costs. Then there's a number of columns that list the current fees charged by 6 other local governments in Clark County, including Clark County. And then I've done best estimate of averaging fees by those jurisdictions, and I've got some footnotes to this. I have some notes about the data that I've collected, and then I've made some subjective observations about whether the proposed fee changes are good, bad, or indifferent or neutral. And I can explain that as I walk through the spreadsheet. Next slide, please. So I have kind of 4-part takeaways to look at this comparison spreadsheet. First of all, that your current fees are much lower than other jurisdictions in Clark County, and they do not likely recover the estimated costs incurred by city staff. And I think that was a finding earlier from Paul Lewis years ago, and then through my assessment of the building and permitting process report. Your current fees do not cover outside consultant review time, and that many times you have a footnote, they're kind of sporadically in your fee table, that a cost recovery agreement would be in place that would be required for payment by the applicant to pay those costs. I have worked with your staff, and I will note that your public works staff, they spend measurable time in processing and or reviewing applications and the submittal items for those applications as required by your municipal code. Next slide, please. So these land use applications range in complexity, mostly due to code requirements and in the amount of processing and review time. These applications can be broken out into families of applications. For example, land divisions is a family of applications. So you have a short plat, a long plat, a preliminary, a final. Site plans are the same. There's a type 2, type 1, type 2, type 3. Conditional use permits, there's a minor, a major, those kinds of things. Some application types run with other applications, and they're mostly categorized, I would say, as environmental permits. So you might have a short plat with a critical area permit because it's along a shoreline or it has a wetland. So there are applications that run with parent applications. I've broken the last piece out into a list of miscellaneous applications that are both developer focused and then resident focused. One of the things you'll see in the spreadsheet is that the resident focused applications are more cost sensitive and consider what I call a barrier of entry principle, which is, you know, you want to make some of these simple applications simple and cost effective, and thus kind of limiting the barrier of entry to a resident for something like, for example, a minor home occupation. Next slide, please. Okay, so I put together a list of proposed fees that would cover the cost of your public works staff only. And it's mainly to employees with assumed hourly rates. Actually, I got from your finance manager, I got real hourly rates of these employees. Then I added a 20% increase to what I call a cost allocation factor, which, you know, any of your employees are not working as an island unto themselves, meaning you have managerial, you have administrative, and you have other overhead expenses that support that staff person. So I've added a 20%, not a surcharge, but a 20% cost allocation factor to hourly rates. The proposed fees are the product of averaging the time spent in hours by the assumed hourly rates of those staff people. Next slide, please. So the proposed fees, you'll see some increases and some decreases, and these again are intended to cover staff costs incurred by the city. Some of the developer-focused application fees see larger increases as they typically require more time to process and to review. The resident-focused application fees see some smaller increases and reflect less time to spend to process and review. But though some additional work in the form of simplified checklists and self-reporting compliance is necessary, and that's going to be at the end of the slide deck, some kind of follow-up. The miscellaneous application fees, you'll see a mixed bag of increases and decreases based on the time commitments and the complexity of review. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you some examples of I have 3 different examples of your current fees and proposed fees. The first one is a 3-lot short plat with some environmental permit, either a shoreline or a critical area. So your current fees, you have a pre-application, a type 2 pre-application, that's $200. Your preliminary short plat, you have a base fee plus a per lot fee. So those fees amount to about $1,225. Your final short plat has just a simple base fee of $340. If you have a shorelines permit, which would be your shoreline substantial development permit, and the critical area would be another $340. So you have about a $2,445 bill for that 3-lot short plat. So under the proposed fees, the pre-app, the type 2 pre-app goes from $200 to $360. The preliminary short plat, your base fee increases by about $200. The same per lot fee, so your total preliminary cost is about $1,415. And then the final short plat is where you'll see the biggest increase is under the base fee at $920, and then your per lot fee actually goes down. It's actually halved by the preliminary. So the per lot fee is $180 instead of $340. So your total final is $1,100. There are no changes to your shorelines permits, your critical area permit. So the under the proposed fee, the grand total would be $3,555. So that's about a 45% increase. And the next example, next slide, please. This is for a larger 40-lot subdivision. Same kind of, and if this subdivision had no environmental critical areas, so it's you know, there's no wetland, there's no slope, there's no stream, anything like that. So it's not very often you'll find these high and dry lands, but let's just say that you have a 40-lot subdivision. Under your current fees, you have a $500 pre-app, about $8,400 for the preliminary long plat, about $1,340 for your final long plat. So the grand total is about $10,240. The difference in the proposed fee is really at the final long plat. Again, it's where you spend time at the end of the process after all improvements have been made, and you're checking that the improvements and the preliminary plat are substantially similar, or excuse me, the final plat is substantially similar than the preliminary plat. So you'll spend that time, the base fee on the final long plat is increased. So you go from about $10,240 to about $11,780. So that's about a 15% increase. Then the last example I have is for site plan review for a commercial building of, say, 12,000 square feet. So you still have your type 2 pre-application fee. Under your current fee, it's $200. Your type 2 preliminary site plan review has a base fee and then a plus. So it's $1,275 plus $85 per 1,000 square feet of floor area. So that 85 times 12 is $1,020. So your total preliminary is just under $2,300. Then you get to final site plan, and there's a base and a plus. So that final site plan goes to $1,445. So your total is just under $4,000. So here's the interesting thing is, as I'm working with your staff, some of the projects, they defer much more to your outside consultant. And I think this is a case where the site plan for commercial site plan review, that's more the case than subdivisions. So the proposed fee is actually a 21% decrease. And the decrease is really at the preliminary review. It's about $500 less on the base than the previous current fee. Next slide, please. So I've got some conclusions. That should say conclusions in path forward, not background, but conclusions in path forward. So changing the current fee table is intended to cover costs incurred by your staff only, and that providing a footnote in the fee table that a cost recovery agreement is required will cover the costs incurred by the city's outside consultant. Use of the cost recovery agreement insulates the city from bearing costs outside the city's control and places the responsibility of the quality of the application and the quality of materials that it submits to the city. It puts that in the hands of the project applicant. So the more efficient they are, the more efficient an applicant is with the consultant, the less cost they incur with the consultant. Modest code amendments will be needed to ensure consistency. One of the things I'll point out to is a type 3 variance is something that's in your code. However, in reading the code, you have some numerical standards, and the type 3 isn't really well defined, and that would be, say, a 25% or more increase over your numerical standard. And then there's some things under your home occupation, and then we would, if the council is so inclined to add a new fee, which is staff consultation, we would have to provide some language in the code about staff consultation. So once we get through all of this, I think Mr. Swanson and I would be looking for the mayor and council to schedule a hearing to consider adoption of the proposed fees as directed by you. And then that we would be looking at some code amendments for the type 3 variance, some home occupations, and staff consultation. Those are just a few that I can just automatically know off the top of my head. So that's the end of my slide deck, but I did want to kind of walk through the spreadsheet if I could, and I think your clerk's going to give me some control over my. Yeah, wow, there we go.
So
Yeah, this
Marty,
might be,
excuse me, Marty.
yeah.
It's for the benefit of the new council members. Of course, what we're talking about here primarily is cost recovery for these applications that we're talking about. There's
Yes.
another component to this and why the city has to go through this exercise. And it's the cumulative amount that the city charges on an annual basis. And could you please address that just briefly as it pertains to that the city cannot charge more than what it costs to do these
Yes.
applications? So
Yeah, and your city attorney, Mr. Potter, can weigh in too. He and I were actually colleagues at the Clark County, and he's well aware of the statute. So you can charge reasonable costs and fees to cover the cost of processing applications, reviewing plans, and undertaking SEPA evaluations under the statute. Maybe Mr. Potter can weigh in as well.
Sure, Marty, I'm happy to. The statute is RCW 8202020, and it limits the ability of any city or county to charge fees for the review of developments. And the limitation is that you can only, as Marty just said, you can only recover the costs of actually processing the application and going through SEPA evaluation. And while Marty and I were working at Clark County, we litigated pretty extensively the county's charges for building permits with the Building Industry Association. Over time, if your fees are out of whack with your actual costs and your revenues and expenses aren't matching up, you can potentially incur a liability if you're charging more than your actual expenses are. So that's why at the beginning, it's important to do what we're doing now, and that is reviewing the fees and making sure that we're accounting for the actual time it takes to do the processing, and then periodically reviewing your revenues and your expenses and seeing that they are within a reasonable range. You don't have to be to the penny, but your fees do have to be limited to target what it actually is costing you to process applications.
If I can chime in for a second, just, we have a little different approach here at La Center because we use a contract city planner to review applications. And so we use a reimbursement agreement to cover the cost of that third party. And then the approach that we're proposing to take here is to calibrate our fixed fee to cover the cost of the city staff time. So that's our permit technician, our city engineer, and their time involved in review. Now, larger jurisdictions, they would typically have a fixed fee that would encompass all of that, but it would be obviously much higher than what we're proposing here. And the reason that they can fix their fee is because of a phenomenon called the law of large numbers. So basically, at La Center, we might get 5 applications of a particular type in a given year. The complexity of those applications can vary from being very simple on one end to being very, very complex and time consuming to process on the other. And so if we take those 5 applications and we average and use the average of those, we will more than likely either over recover or under recover, depending on how many of those 5 were more complex or more simple. In a large jurisdiction, they may get thousands of that same type of application in the same year. So it's a little easier to zero in on a central tendency, an average, and have that accurately reflect the cost to provide the services. So if that makes sense. So what we're proposing is to calibrate the fee to cover that fixed cost, and then the variability, the complexity or simplicity would be covered in the reimbursement agreement with the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember us talking about this back in, I think, yeah, it was in early 2020, and we asked for this study to be done. What was the cost of the study? I can't remember if we put a budget number on it or not. Does anybody know what the cost is of this study?
So the initial study, I want to say it was done in 2019.
Oh, 2019. All right.
And from that initial study, and I want to say the initial task order was like $20,000, and we spent of that like 12 to 14,000. I don't know. I'd have to rack my memory a little bit, Councilmember Strobin. But I want to say,
Jeff, it was 30.
So it was 30.
The report was 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason I'm asking for, Jeff, is just, is this something else that we can throw into the fees to recoup as well? I know it'd be little dollars over the time period, but since we're not allowed to charge astronomical numbers to make money on stuff like this, but at least recoup our cost, would that be included in it?
Well, it would be the cost to review applications. The study that was done was looking at the entire community development department and processes there. And from that came a list of, I want to say like 40 or 45 tasks that we're just kind of working, we prioritized and we're working through. And one of those tasks was to review our building and land use and engineering fees and adopt updated fee tables.
Yeah, I don't think you could recover the cost of the study because it's the study is not actually the processing of an application. So.
Okay, thank you.
If only this was an impact fee study. I know impact fees can pay for impact fee studies, but. All right, I think I'm sharing this screen. You all see this?
Yeah, we see it, Marty. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna show you the kind of the expanse of this spreadsheet, and it's kind of color coded. It has, I mean, this is it has about 16 columns, and when I scroll down here, you'll see that there are some footnotes, and this you'll get this tomorrow morning, and you can look at it in your leisure. But let me kind of walk through this. I'm going to blow some of this stuff up. So you'll see across the top, I've got, so the first column is the type of fee that you're looking at. The second column is the current center fee structure. The two lighter colored green columns are your employee 1 and employee 2. That's your public works employees. And then the two the darker green shading is the center proposed fees of staff time. And then that column, the next column over labeled F, it's the fees that you have the additional costs. Like for short plats and site plans, you have a plus, 85 cents a dollar, or 85 cents, or $85 a lot, or 1,000 square feet. Not all of them have that plus, that base plus. So you'll see a lot of them don't have that. So then across the next number of columns, you have the jurisdictions in Clark County, Battleground, Camas, Clark County itself, Richfield, Vancouver, Washougal. And then column 11 is an attempt at averaging the fee of these jurisdictions. Column 12, I have a note about the data. For example, in row 11, where the average fee of a preliminary short plat is $3,300, the note next to that, note number 1, it notes that you have data that are outliers. So Clark County and Vancouver's very high fees skew the data. So that's kind of what that is telling you. The next column over, this number 13, tells you how many application types are in this family of, say, pre-application conference. There are 3 types of pre-application conferences. You have a type 2, a type 3 or 4, and then you have a waiver. This number 13, under your land division or subdivision fees, you have 4 types of applications. Site plan, you have 4, and so on and so forth. And then this is I took some liberty and did some subjective observations on whether or not, as proposed, the fees are good, bad, or kind of neutral. And when you read through the memo that describes all of these fees relative to the other agencies, you'll see where my kind of thought process goes. So anything that you see also in red text means that there's probably a note about the data. So if I scroll down to the bottom, a lot of these notes have either Battleground, Clark County, Vancouver skew the data, Camas, Clark County, Vancouver skew the data, Clark County and or Vancouver skew the data. And then there's some in here, there's a small data set or a single data point. For example, the tree removal, there's only one other agency with a tree removal permit that I could find. That's at the very bottom here, under K56, $325. There's only a single data point. So when I went back up to here where site plan review, for example, a type 2 site plan review is something, for example, it's a commercial development. And you're looking at the commercial development in compliance to your zoning code, parking standards, street, landscaping, lighting, all of the things that are part and parcel of a commercial development. So when you start looking at the other agencies, they have so many variables of how to calculate fees for a type 2 site plan review. It's just hard to arrive at a good estimate. And that happens in a few cases. It happens under this type 2 site plan. It happens at critical areas reviews. And I would say that the larger agencies, particularly Clark County and the City of Vancouver, they have staff, on board to actually process those applications. Those are the 2 areas where there are just too many variables to calculate an average. So I can walk through these kind of one by one if that's the pleasure of the mayor and the council, or I can give you kind of some high-level observations. What would you prefer?
Marty, I think if we did a high level, give you your high level observations, and then if the individual council members want to drill down on something, of course, they're welcome to ask any questions they have. But, I think your presentation here is making it clear. So,
well, and what I hope, honestly, I took the memo and I wrote it as if you've never seen this before, and I've actually I write it as if you're reading it for the first time, and it's kind of an instructive guide on how to read the spreadsheet, and kind of that's what I would look at, and you'll all get this tomorrow morning. So, but in general, what I'll do is I'll walk through this first kind of darker green column of the proposed fees that we lined up. And I will say, Mr. Mayor and Council, it's been really nice to work with your staff, particularly Sarah Dollar, Tony Cooper, and Matt Jenkins. They've been really good to work with. I've had Jeff on a couple different phone calls too, so they've given me really good guidance. Your consultant planner, Ethan, has been in a number of the meetings too, so he's given us really good insight and some information. So a lot of this work is not all my doing. It's certainly your staff in helping me through this. So I'll kind of go through these families of permits. So you have pre-application conference applications that these are usually for your major land developments, like short plats, subdivisions, site plans, conditional use permits, major shoreline permits. So an applicant comes in and they have these pre-apps. So by and large, the pre-apps, the type 2 pre-app, which is probably your more common, there's actually a bit of an increase there. But at type 3, it's about the same. It's actually a little cheaper. And then the waiver, a pre-app waiver, is something that should be fairly simple. And so that reflects a lower dollar threshold, that 110. As I walk through the examples of subdivisions, plats. So we're increasing the preliminary short plat, but decreasing some of the preliminary long plat. Your site plan review, I would say they all go lower, and this is again for your staff time only, not WSP's outside consultant review. So these fees actually go a little lower than what you have currently in fees. You have post-decision reviews, which are so you have a project that's been approved and the applicant wants to change something post-approval. They can go through what's called a post-decision review. Those are fairly simple, but they are time-consuming because you have to revisit the development itself and the conditions imposed and the requirements of the code. So they are increased. The type 1 is about $150 more, and the type 2 and 3 are about half again as much, or maybe, well, double in the type 2. And that's where you see a lot of commercial site plans and short plats are your type 2 applications. SEPA review actually goes down. Your staff doesn't spend as much time on SEPA review, so that fee goes down. And then the shorelines permit applications that you have in your code, which are substantial development permit, conditional use permit, and variance. Staff provided very little input in terms of, this is something they defer to the experts on. So I've taken a position that you should keep the fees current and make no changes to them. So you'll see that there's no change in the 350 and 850 numbers. Your conditional use permits actually go down quite a bit because I think those again are more substantively reviewed by your outside consultant. So your minor and major go down a significant degree. Under your comprehensive plan amendment, that too goes down. And my sense is that the outside consultant that you have to review comprehensive plan amendments, that cost recovery agreement would be, I would say, fairly substantial, because that is comp plan amendments are heavy lifts. They involve your planning commission and you as a city council. Variances. A variance is something like you want your a setback. If you have a 10-foot setback required and you want to go to 8 feet, you do a variance. Or if you do 5 feet, you do another type of variance. So you've got a type 1, 2, and 3 variance, and they're all, again, fairly low from, the proposed fees would be lower than those that are currently adopted. I have a list of miscellaneous fees, and this is where you kind of get into a mixed bag of costs. So you have two annexation permits, if you will, or applications. There's the initial 10% annexation petition that goes from $250 to $280, and then the 60% petition, which is your public hearing and consideration of zoning and assumption of city indebtedness. That goes up to $500 and $60 per parcel. And again, I believe annexations are probably processed most substantively by your outside consultant. We have a couple home occupation types. There's a minor and a major. And the minor actually increases by about double, but the major goes down by about half here, 160 and 220. On the major home occupation, there might be need for a site visit. And that would be something like, you know, making sure that there's setback, signage, parking, those kinds of things that are required for a major home occupation. If that site visit is required, then you tack on an additional $105. The rezone, again, is goes from the current 2125 down to 240. And this is, again, to cover your staff time on this. A sign permit, which is basically for zoning compliance, not the building piece of it, but the zoning compliance. That goes from $25 to $60. I'll skip the next item, which is the staff consultation, and get down to your temporary use permits. There's a type 1 and a type 2. Those are both set at $60, and then a tree removal. So the staff consultation, I mentioned this in the earlier report that was submitted to council. This has been a while, pre-COVID, I believe. So staff consultation, and I believe this is I outlined it in the memo, is when you have developers who kick the tire a lot and they spend a lot of time with your staff, and your staff time at a point in time, at somewhere along the way, it's not free, and that they have other things to do. So a staff consultation is something that would, you know, if somebody is interested in real development in the city, they would request a staff consultation, and they would fill out an application of what they want to do, what issues they want to talk about, and then your staff would say, oh, we need Tony here to review engineering, or we need Jim here to look at the building stuff. So you would invite the appropriate staff to the staff consultation meeting so that you get that developer can ask specific questions rather than kind of kicking the tire around and searching for the right answers, if you know what I mean. So that staff consultation would be set up at $180. And I think one of the things I mentioned is that it kind of forces a developer, if you will, to kind of make up their mind. What do they want to do? If they're serious about development, then they have to put it down in writing and ask specific questions rather than kind of, you know, a project in search of answers, or answers in search of a project. So that's what I have, and I will provide this spreadsheet to you and a memo that kind of walks through cell by cell. And then that's all that I have for the presentation. Are there any questions that you might have? I know I've probably overwhelmed you with all of this, but.
No, I really don't have any questions, but thank you very much. I know this is something that's been long overdue to get finished and wrapped up, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Marty. It's very well prepared, and compared to what the material we've had in the past, this makes it much more easy to follow and understand the various levels of and intricacies behind the permits and everything that's involving the staff time.
Right.
So I appreciate it.
Yeah. And when I give this information to you in the memo, I'll have my my contact information. If you have any questions after this, you know, tomorrow, next week, next month, just give me or not next month, it's December already. But yeah, if you have any questions anytime soon, just feel free to reach out to me.
I have a couple of real quick questions. Being new to this, how long has it been since these current fees have been reviewed or updated?
That's a good question. Jeff, would you know the last time Paul Lewis took a look at this?
It would predate me. So I started in late 2018 doing work with the city of La Center. And so I want to say it had been maybe at least a year or two before that. Mayor, do you have any recollection of when the fees were updated last?
I just don't hold me to this, but I think the last time we really had any council action was in 2016. So it's been a while since this has really been looked at. I don't ever recall it being researched and this type of analysis has been applied to our land use fees. Of course, this is only half of what the case Apposito has been working on. The other half, of course, is the same type of analysis that they've done for the building permits. And we've done something very similar on that as well, reviewing all those. But what really drove this and what was really critical for the city to do it when we did it was we're having such a huge increase in the volume of development we had in the city, both from land use and permitting. Back in 2014, 15, we were doing, maybe 10, 12 permits a year. This year, like last year, the city's issued over 100 building permits just for new homes. So it's a good question, Casey. I don't have an exact date, but
Well, that's okay. It's definitely time. So I appreciate how clear it is by both the explanation and the sheet. Do you have a recommendation, or will you include a recommendation on how often we should review these?
annually.
Well, I think that you should review these probably I would say you'd go maybe 3 or 4 years tops. I'd say every like 4 years would be the most. It depends on the development environment and what's happening in the economy and whether or not you've had any substantial changes to your staff costs. So if you, for example, if you hired on a staff planner, you would probably need to add another column of time for that particular person to review short plats or conditional use permits instead of having an outside consultant do it. So it kind of depends on the economy, how your land development and building environment is, and then the structural costs of your permitting department, your planning department.
Okay, well, thank you. Nobody likes additional fees, but the city can't continue to bleed, so we have to do something to make sure that we recover the costs on these. So thank you.
Well, Jeff alluded to it earlier too, is that the mayor and council were very wise to pick up the building fees right away and get those on the books early in the year, because really the building boom is much more immediate than these land development applications. Their land development's a precursor to all your building stuff, but once you got subdivision lots online, people are pulling building permits, and you're going to lose out on revenue if you don't have an updated building fee table. So they were very smart to get that adopted early in the year and not miss out on revenue for 2021.
So that leads to another question that you mentioned earlier in your presentation, that barriers to entry was a concern. The reality is these numbers seem very reasonable, if not on the lower side compared to what the others are. Do we have a legitimate concern that this, a percentage increase, percentages are deceiving because, you know, it shows 45%. Wow, that seems like a lot, but in reality, it's several $100s. So, is there a real legitimate concern that this is going to be a barrier to any development?
Well, so just to point out too, on this in this spreadsheet where you see some of these numbers, actually the fees going down, and I'm kind of highlighting some of the site plan review. This is to cover your staff time only. So a developer is also going to pay for the cost of an outside consultant through a cost recovery agreement. So the total cost to the city is X. There's a Y factor to the outside consultant to give you the total that developer, that applicant is paying for the permit application or approval. So it's not, the difficulty in some of this data is that it may not reflect accurately. So I've kind of defined the actual cost to be the city staff time plus consultant time. If you add those up and you get numbers, then you compare them to what other agencies are charging, and you get a more apples to apples comparison, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
But I would say that some of these other miscellaneous permit types, which I've titled them kind of resident focused. They do look at what is the cost, and is there a barrier to entry? And if you could make some of these things more simple in your code, or more simple with an application and a checklist, and what I've called kind of self-policing regulations, then the resident doesn't incur a great deal of cost, and nor does the city.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
I'm curious as to, I mean, I've heard Jeff Swanson say this a number of times, that anybody can go get a business license in the city. I'm just curious what the process is with the city staff and whose job and responsibility it is while working with the outside consultants on when someone gets a business license and they, you know, fill out that, you know, simple application that anybody can do. Who's now following up with those addresses? I mean, we have more home-based businesses now more than ever, thanks to the pandemic. And, you know, we say we're not seeing many applications for businesses, maybe home development, but obviously our goal here is to increase small business. And so I'm just curious where, because I have concerns in that crossover and who's following up with that and making sure that when small businesses come in, they're getting that process done efficiently from start, they're being educated, they're being welcomed in with the right process. And where is that line?
That's a good question. I would say that it was a bit outside of the scope of our work, was to look at business licenses. And business licenses are, I would say, can be somewhat unique. Some cities require business licenses, others don't. But I think in almost all cases, the business license should refer to any other city code requirement, whether that's a building permit application or a home occupation permit or a conditional use permit, or whatever the city's code, what the city's laws, codes, and standards are. And there should be some kind of cross-reference in a business license. There should be some cross-reference in a business license application to refer to either a building permit or a land development permit. And then it's up to the city for, you know, training staff to make sure that communication is seamless and helpful to an applicant.
I can chime in on that too, Marty. So as you know, the past couple of years, the process now goes through the Department of Revenue for people to get their business license. And so we have it set up with the Department of Revenue that business license are not automatically approved when they answer X, Y, and Z questions. Then we get a notification, and it's usually our community development staff or those people in the building and planning department that will then look and see, okay, what kind of permit have they requested, and are they following X, Y, and Z that they need to do. So that process has been a transition these past couple of years, but that's the way it's working now. The permits are not automatically approved if you answer the questions according to the way that if you need a permit. Is that understandable?
Yeah. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So then somebody's following up with them and asking them more questions about their property or where they're hoping to do this, or if they're just trying, obviously the goal is to increase revenue, right? If we're increasing these prices, it's to obviously increase overall revenue. But there's a lot of, people that may not know the right process, and how are we educating those small businesses when they're coming in? If they're selling candy from their house and they're meeting people at, driving to Richfield and selling it, they're still, based in La Center, and there's a lot of things like that. So we just want to make sure that there's clear communication for them, and education. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
I had somebody walk by my office to make sure I was all right.
Okay, we're pushing right up against 6:30 here. Marty, I want to thank you for your presentation. Council, we can surely run a few minutes over if you have any more questions. If not, I would like to just review next steps with Marty and Jeff, and where would we take this from here? So any other questions, Council, before we wrap this up? Okay.
So I'll be in touch with Jeff and the mayor on next steps. Is that all right?
That works, Marty.
Okay, great.
And we'll bring that to council as we continue to move forward with this project. But again, I appreciate all your hard work and efforts. It's,
thank you.
Well organized, and also appreciate all the work of the city staff too. I know this has been a team effort, but it's good to see we're bringing it to a conclusion here. So thank you, Marty.
I send the spreadsheet and the memo to Jeff. I don't have everybody's email. I'll make sure that Jeff gets it, and Sarah and some of your staff, and they can distribute it to you all with my contact information.
That'll work, Marty.
Is that good?
Yeah, copy Maria on that as well, please.
Okay, Maria, okay. And then one other thing is I will need to be coordinating eventually with Mr. Potter on any kind of formal ordinance when it comes time for council's consideration at a hearing and adoption. So I'll have to work with him on that.
Yes, absolutely, of course. No problem.
Okay. Well, I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, and hope you have a great Christmas this season.
Okay. Again, thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Have a good evening.
Okay. We'll talk about timing, exactly 6:30. How are we doing, council? Would you like to just take a couple minutes break before we get into the city council meeting, or are we just ready to go right into it? Anybody need a break? Council? Okay.
Nope, I'm good.
So clerk, we are continuing to record this?
We are.
Very good. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, December 1st, 2021, and I'd like to call this evening's city council meeting to order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
United
flag
States of America,
of the United States
and
of
the
America,
republic for which
and
it
the
stands,
republic
one
for which
nation
it
under
stands,
God,
one
indivisible,
nation, and
with liberty
indivisible,
and justice for all.
and justice for all.
So next on the agenda, we have the oath of offices for our two new city council members, Councilmember Melissa Fox and Councilmember Casey Kasbe. And Maria will be doing the swearing in of the two new council members. And we'll get that done right now. So Maria?
We will start with Ms. Fox. If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Melissa Fox, do solemnly swear
You're muted, Melissa.
I, Melissa Fox, do solemnly swear
I, Melissa Fox, do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I'm a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and will do to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability
and will to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability,
truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially
truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially
perform the duties of the office
perform the duties of the office
of Council Position Number 1, City of La Center,
of Council Position Number 1, City of La Center,
in and for Clark County and the state of Washington,
in and for Clark County and the state of Washington,
as such duties are prescribed by law.
as such duties are prescribed by law.
Thank you, and congratulations, Councilmember Fox.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Now, Mr. Kasberg.
Okay, I am unmuted.
All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Casey Kasberg, do solemnly swear
I, Casey Kasbe, do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I am a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and will, to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability,
and I will, to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability,
truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially
truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially
perform the duties of the office of Council Position Number 2, City of La Center,
perform the duties of the office of Council Position Number 2, City of La Center,
in and for Clark County and the state of Washington,
in and for Clark County, the state of Washington,
as such duties are prescribed by law.
as such duties are prescribed by law.
Thank you, and congratulations, Councilmember Kasberg.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good job, guys. Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Maria, and congratulations, Councilmember Kasbe and Councilmember Fox. If I could please get the roll call, clerk.
Yeah.
Councilmember Fox,
Here.
Councilmember Kasberg,
Here.
Councilmember Williams,
Present.
Councilmember Strobin.
Here.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Present.
and Mayor Thornton.
Present. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Next on the agenda are citizen public comment. Clerk, do we have any citizen public comments this evening?
Yes, we've got a few public comments. Linda Tracy, I want to congratulate the new council members, Sean Boyle, Melissa Fox, and Casey Kasberg. I wish you good luck learning about the workings of city government. Linda Tracy. 11/30/2021, Mayor, Council, and citizens. I would like to congratulate Melissa Fox, Casey Kasberg, and Sean Boyle on their overwhelming victories for their new council positions. They are a welcome addition to the council, and I look forward to their enthusiasm and much needed fresh ideas for La Center. Welcome aboard. Nelda Perryman, 824 East Pioneer Loop, La Center, Washington. General comment for City Council meeting December 1, 2021. This year's primary election showed an unprecedented enthusiasm for change in city government, with 13 individuals running for 3 open council positions. The subsequent voter turnout to elect the new council members was equally impressive, with each of the new council members taking over 60% of the votes for each position. Congratulations to Melissa Fox, Casey Kasberg, and Sean Boyle, who will take office at the end of 2021. Joanne Tucker, 1002 East 24th Circle, La Center, Washington. Sean Boyle, 662 East Vine Maple Ave. Dear Mayor and Council, due to the recent events at the Christmas parade in Wisconsin, I want to suggest that the city provide adequate physical barriers such as unused city vehicles, preferably our fleet of law enforcement cruisers, blocking off all street access to the Christmas tree lighting festival downtown La Center. I also suggest that there be a law enforcement presence to preserve the safety of our community. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Sean Boyle. From Sally Alcazin, 1000 East Heritage Loop, La Center, Washington. I want to congratulate our newly elected city council members. I look forward to working with all 3 of you in an effort to continuously improve our city. Sally Alcazin. And that is all.
Thank you, Clerk. I would just like to comment on the public comment that we had from Sean Boyle, and just to adjust it from the fact that the city has looked at those issues and we are addressing it. We'll be taken care of at the Christmas festival. But thank you. So next is the mayor's report. I do have a few things I'd like to share with the council this evening. First of all, again, I want to welcome Councilmember Fox and Councilmember Kasbe to the City Council, and congratulate them for their success in the campaign. I look forward to working with both the new council members as well as our existing council members to address the many challenges and opportunities that the city has in front of us. They've joined the council at a very challenging time, and again, I'm looking forward to working with the council to continue moving the city forward in the best possible way. Just a reminder that tomorrow evening, beginning at 6:30, I will be having my virtual mayor's town hall meeting, and again, everyone is welcome to attend. As a reminder, our next city council meeting will be Wednesday, December 15th, beginning at 6:30. And then also, again, this Sunday, we will be having our Christmas tree lighting and Christmas celebration. It will be starting at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I just also want to remind everybody that Santa House will happen on Friday, December 3rd. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the tree lighting ceremony on Sunday. And finally, I do have a letter from the Department of Ecology that I'd like to share with the council this evening. It's I'm a little late at actually presenting this. I received it on July 23rd of this year, but it's regarding the wastewater treatment plant Outstanding Performance Awards. And I would just like to read a couple paragraphs, if the council will indulge me, from the letter. It says, congratulations, the City of La Center Wastewater Treatment Plant is receiving the 2020 Wastewater Treatment Plant Outstanding Performance Award. Of approximately 300 wastewater treatment plants statewide, yours is one of 125 that achieved full compliance with its National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit in 2020. This is the third consecutive year the La Center Wastewater Treatment Plant received this award. Your excellent record is a credit to the dedicated operators who are responsible for running this award-winning plant. Operators faced an unprecedented challenge in 2020 and used impressive creativity and shared expertise to manage wipes, gloves, and masks, clogging pipes and pumps, and numerous other challenges. Ecology appreciates the extraordinary level of effort your plant operators demonstrated throughout 2020. Talented and proficient operators are critical to successful plant operations and protecting the health of Washington's waters. So I just want to congratulate and thank the wastewater treatment plant staff, led by Matt Jenkins, our Public Works Director, Jeff Hammond, and Bill Birdwell for a job extremely well done. And pretty evident by this letter that we received from Department of Ecology, it's not going unnoticed. So great job, Matt. Thank you. That's all I have this evening for the council. Next is the attorney's report. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. I'd like to first congratulate council members Fox and Kasbe on their election. I know how exciting that must be for you and look forward to working with you. One of the first things that new council members need to do is there's a state law requiring training on the Public Records Act and the Open Public Meetings Act. And so I think Maria will be in touch with you on scheduling that training, probably to occur in January. And also I think would be beneficial if we did a training that we did with the council this past year on the roles and responsibilities of council members. So look forward to doing that with you in January. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Bronson. So next are council comments. We'll begin with Councilmember Fox.
I just want to say I'm really excited to be here tonight, and thank you for the warm welcome. I'm really excited for the tree lighting. I'll be there with my boys on Sunday, and I look forward to seeing lots of friendly faces. So, yeah, that's all I have for tonight.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Kasbe.
Yeah, I too would like to thank everybody for the warm welcome. I'm very excited to be here and ready to get to work. I want to acknowledge Dennis Hill. I really appreciate the email that he sent offering any support that he can give to us. And I know he's been involved with the city for a long time. So thank you, Dennis. And I'm sure that you'll find other ways to contribute in the future. And we look forward to having you there. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to congratulate and welcome Councilmember Fox and Kasbe. When I joined the council over 10 years ago, there was a lot of learning curve that you're going to be facing. So again, I'll be out after the next meeting, but feel free to contact me. I've been in contact with Mr. Boyle, and there's a lot of history out here, and sometimes that information is helpful for you. But that's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Stroman?
I too want to welcome and congratulate the two new council members. I look forward to working with both of you and working on the city's issues that are serious issues that are facing the city in the future. I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving, and I too will be at the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. So I hope to see lots of friendly faces. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councilmember Servany.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to congratulate and welcome Councilmember Fox and Councilmember Kasbe. I look forward to working with you both, and we're always available if we need any assistance or questions answered. We're happy to help, and I think that's always been a very rewarding aspect to the council, so take advantage of it if you need it. And I'd also like to thank Matt and his team for the great work once again with the wastewater treatment plant. You continue to do an extraordinary job with limited staffing, and you always really knock it out of the park. So I hope you take pride in your team and everything that you've accomplished, and as much pride as we have in each of you. Thank you for your hard work.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
At what time is the Christmas tree lighting on Sunday?
4:30. It begins at 4:30 this year.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll be in my Santa outfit on the railroad. I'm sorry, I won't be able to, but it looks like I'll be here.
Okay. Well, you'll be missed, Randy, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and thank you, Councilmember Servany, for your comments. Okay, Council, we do have two staff reports this evening on the agenda, and the first one will be the Community Development Staff Report, and Mr. Jeff Swanson will be presenting that.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening, and welcome to Council Members Kasbe and Fox. And just a few updates tonight on some community development projects that I'll go through. First one I'll talk about is number 9, which is Highland Terrace, a residential subdivision, 98 lot subdivision. The contractor there is completing testing of the underground sanitary and sewer piping, and a final subgrade of the roads in phase 1 of that subdivision is nearly complete. Next update relates to project number 12, which is right across the road from Highland Terrace, Riverside Estates. And this relates to site plan review for phase 3, which is the multifamily phase. And some second round comments were provided in late October to the applicant on that project. Next project is number 13, which was Stevens Hillside, and that is an 86 lot subdivision. And a pre-application meeting was conducted November 10th to discuss a revised site plan, and staff are currently reviewing the process for some proposed changes to the site plan that was previously approved. So a post-decision review process for that. Number 18 is the new City Hall, and reimbursement for the design grant from the Department of Commerce was submitted on November 9th, and it's anticipated that the construction will be completed by the end of the year. The elevator needs to be operational in order to obtain building occupancy, and this approval is subject to a state certification. So we have some timelines there we're working to meet in order to get occupancy on the new City Hall building. Two new ones on the project list. Number 20 is the Fudge property, and a boundary line adjustment has been submitted for that property. And number 21, which is Tappanee Carlson Commercial. The city held a pre-application conference with Tapany Inc. recently to consider a proposed commercial retail use that they're referring to as a rockery on the Carlson commercial property there on the south side of La Center Road. And so we have some questions we're researching related to that application or proposed use, and are going to work with Sarah Mack, who's our conflicts counsel, legal counsel on this one. So happy to entertain any questions you might have, counsel.
Yeah, Jeff, going back to the City Hall building, we were told that it was going to be done in November, and now we're looking at the end of the year. So I actually have two questions. What was the cause of the delay?
So I don't have a whole lot of specifics on it other than it looks like it's related to the elevator, and I know that some aspects of the construction have been ongoing. I don't know if Matt and or Maria want to chime in and add any additional detail to that.
Yes, we did have some supply chain issues. So the carpet was really delayed in coming in. That was one of them. And then the elevator was a big holdup. We actually do have the elevator inspection. I believe it's on Friday. So we're very close to making that move.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Thanks, Jeff. Second question, how far are we over on the change orders? Are we still in target within budget, or how much over are we?
We can get a final number for you when everything wraps up. And it did, and I think Tony was addressing that when we were talking about our capital projects, and I don't have that number for you, but we'll get it for you when we finalize this.
Okay, thanks, Maria.
Any other questions, Council, for Mr. Swanson this evening?
Hey, Jeff, this Randy. Did you have time to follow up on the hotel tax?
Yes, I believe I sent you an email on that.
No, I didn't see anything.
Okay. I thought I had sent something on that. Maybe there was some MRSC about that.
Okay.
I'll resend it to him.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious.
You copied me on that as well, Jeff. And yeah, you might want to just take a look again, Randy. I think you sent it about over a week ago. But I'm sure that your name was on it as well. I received a copy as well. Okay. Okay, Council, if there's no other questions for Mr. Swanson, we'll move on to the next staff report from, will be the Public Works staff report, and Mr. Matt Jenkins will be presenting this evening. Matt. You might be muted, Matt.
I don't even see him on. Is he on?
He is.
He's right next to your icon there. Clerk, can you tell if we're having a technical problem here, or?
We are not, but it could be his internet. I can call him if you hold on just a second.
Yeah, if need be, we'll have to have him call in. Thank you.
He was having some technical difficulties, so he's calling in. It'll be just a second.
Thank you, Maria.
Absolutely. Sorry for the delay.
We
Gotta love,
understand.
gotta love technology.
It's wonderful when it's working. I appreciate everyone's patience. Hopefully this will work. If not, we'll have to postpone his report to the next city council meeting.
So it looks like his laptop has crashed. So even if he calls in, I'm not sure that he has a paper copy of his report. So why don't we go ahead and delay his till next meeting?
Okay, well, I apologize for that, council, but we will just include the Public Works staff report at the next city council meeting. So that will actually conclude our city council meeting for this evening. If there are no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Could I get a second?
It looks like he's
Oh,
back.
there's Matt.
Matt's back. He uncrashed his computer, so we did not have a second. We didn't take a vote on the adjournment, so we are still in session.
Okay. If I may present, I apologize for the delay there, everybody. That was unfortunate. Matt Jenkins, Public Works Director. Thank you, Mayor, Council, new Council, old Council, and citizens. So I've got the Public Works staff report for December. We can start with streets and facilities. And some of this will sound redundant. So those of you that have been around for a few years, but that's what we do. We keep doing. So Public Works continues to work on keeping the city properties maintained, the drainage systems clear throughout the city. Fall's coming to a close, and the crew's spending considerable time on leaf blowing and cleaning up leaves. A big majority of that's going to be probably billed under stormwater because we are trying to keep the stormwater system clean, and that's where a lot of those branches and leaves and things from the heavy rains and even ice come down to. Winter preparation has begun. Vehicles are being outfitted for winter operations, including de-icing equipment, pillows and sanders, along with brine ordering. I know I've got more than a few questions on that, but they will be prepared. It's nothing new to us, so this time every year we're ready to go. As always, the Public Works crew is continuously monitoring and repairing potholes along with any road hazards. The heavy rains have started to show more potholes through the city. It's just the nature of washing out weaknesses in the concrete and the asphalt. They have applied several hundred pounds of asphalt repair mix in the last few weeks. Public Works has been busy prepping for the Christmas celebration coming up on Sunday. And the city Christmas tree has been wrapped with nearly 3,000 lights. The bridge decorations have been installed and numerous other decorations have been installed and are being prepped or installed at this time. You may have noticed them on some of the city buildings and roundabout. Parks and Grounds, Battleground Work Crew, they've had a small number of participants. They have been assisting with pruning and debris cleanup, which has been helpful. Mowing has almost come to a close for the season. Staff are using the extra time to clean up leaves and work on the fall pruning, transitioning more to storm system care and foliage cleanup. Preparations for winter have begun. City irrigation systems around the second week of December will be winterized. On the personnel side, currently all staff are working normal shifts. All appropriate safety precautions are being followed. If I could get the next page, clerk, thanks. And that takes care of operations. On the wastewater operations side, all plant parameters remain well within permit compliance. Biosolids inventory remains low, especially for this time of year. I'm actually really excited about it. The two operators have done a great job keeping the inventory low. Part of that is getting rid of assisting Kalama and just going with ALNA, but you know, on the other turn, they've done a really good job of keeping production up and making sure that the production hours stay high even through the holidays. So hats off to them. The city's currently receiving 6 loads per month instead of 8 of solids from ALNA for processing. It used to be 4 and 4 from ALNA, 4 from Kalama. The MBRs continue to run well. As the weather cools, the permeability remains strong. We will clean probably next week. Staff has cleaned both MBRs ahead of the wet season, and both MBRs showing strong recovery. That being said, we are going to clean number 2 again here pretty quick, just because we got some incredibly high flows coming in from the rain, and that did degrade our permeability a little bit further than we're comfortable with, and so we want to make sure those numbers stay strong. On the maintenance side, routine preventative maintenance is always ongoing. There's 380 pieces of moving equipment in that plant, along with, and that's not counting instrumentation. Staff is completing the final annual services on the pumps and submersibles. Most submersible pumps, mixers, and blowers have had their annual services and inspections. Collection system maintenance and lift station cleanings are completed. I believe they completed those a couple weeks ago, so they got rid of the grease caps, made sure the pumps were clear. We did have a call out recently. As of Monday, looked like some landscaping fabric from one of the developments came down. So we're going to backtrace that and see if we can speak with some of the contractors and make sure that doesn't happen again. But staff was all over it. They took care of it before it became a bigger issue than it could have been. All generators have been fueled in preparation for winter operations, so we're ready for any power outages, inclement weather, things like that. On the administrative side, the November discharge monitor report is being compiled and prepared for submission to Ecology. Staff has completed their continuing education requirements. Certification renewals currently are being processed for the period ending in 2021, so everybody will have their licenses ready for 2022. The annual effluent characterization testing is currently being planned with BSK Labs. I've got an update on that. BSK dropped off the bottles today. The sampling will be done tomorrow morning, and they'll pick up tomorrow afternoon. So characterization testing will be basically into the lab at that point by tomorrow afternoon. Biosolid sampling, 4th quarter, has been received by ALS Labs up in Kelso for processing. I don't see any issues there. It's business as usual, good product. We don't expect any anomalies in that testing. Staff's currently working regular shifts, but maintaining social distancing and masking practices when necessary. On the project side, SCADA project is still with TAG. We hope to run redundant systems here in the next few weeks. It looks like on-site installation and testing will start on December 14th, and at which point we'll run the current SCADA system along with the new SCADA system, and we'll give it 30 to 60 days to make sure we work out all the kinks. So, but we don't just want to switch over raw in that. I'm sure Councilmember Stroman can relate to that, what he deals with. The actuator in La Center Road has been delayed until 2022 due to supply chain constraints and excessive lead times. The good news is we've solved most of the infiltration problems in that vault that were design flaw. On the building department side, permitting and construction are still progressing, but we have noticed seasonal slowing. Staff is conducting an average of 10 to 12 stops per day, 20 to 35 inspections, both residential and commercial. Single family residential plan review times are currently still at 3 weeks, dipping into the 2-week time frame from what I heard this week. Staff has taken in 91 single family and 5 commercial building permits so far this year. The new middle school has achieved temporary occupancy. They just renewed it today. Actually, we're at the time frame where they needed a renewal, but they're also having some supply chain issues to get the parts they need to complete their final inspection. The building official continues to work with the school district to achieve occupancy. Teresa's Little School has been granted temporary occupancy, and the building official continues to work with them and Gentile Investments to achieve full occupancy and final occupancy. I don't see any issues with that. If it does delay, they do have an option for one extension coming up. On the stormwater side, thank you, Clerk. The street sweeper has been cleaning up leaves on the mains and thoroughfare and throughout the town. Staff submitted a stream assessment report to the Department of Ecology for testing completed in the drainage ravine between 10th Street and 5th Street. The city will continue to work with the Department of Ecology and provide information to the public about waste disposal and further monitoring and testing on the stormwater downstream of Gordon Crest subdivision. Ultimately, it comes down to we want to educate people about dog waste. We found a high level of dog waste. My hat's off to the wastewater staff because they basically took their lab and assisted stormwater and public works ops with the testing and engineering to work with ecology. So we were able to get these fecal coliform numbers because of our wastewater department and their accredited laboratory and their willingness to help and pitch in. So we're continuing to narrow that down, work with ecology, and there are some grant dollars available if we find it's a larger problem than we can handle internally. And we're excited to keep progressing and make sure that we get this corrected. But the vast majority of the contamination we're seeing is mainly dog waste. So there will be some public outreach and education involved with that. Staff has been monitoring an erosion issue above Pollock Road. Temporary control issues are being applied, but a long-term solution is scheduled for next year. There's currently no risk at the roadway, but we continue to work on that from the engineering and on side. So are there any questions?
Oh, Matt, but I don't know if you got to hear the mayor read that letter before you crashed and tell you congratulations. Very pleased with it. I do have one favor to ask. Sure. When we know there's flooding coming in, can we pull the picnic tables from the new beach area so they're not swimming down the way?
Yeah, they're chained down. I asked that question myself to ops. I was a little concerned myself coming across the bridge, looking at the USS picnic table, getting ready to take launch. But they are chained down, they are anchored, but I know Dave and Aaron both are keeping a close eye on those because the last thing we want to do is lose a $500 picnic table for the city. So
yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yeah,
and the decorations look great, by the way.
Yeah, that's not me, that's all them. They do a great job. Thank you, though. I'll relay the message.
Hey, Matt, I do have a question. The street sweeper, is that part of our fleet, or are we still using outside agencies?
Oh, that's a great question. That's actually part of our fleet. We've had the street sweeper, I think, since back in 2014. We have 2 crew members now that have Class B commercial licenses, and that street sweeper, because of the requirements, its weight, and what it involves, and along with the storage tank, it involves a Class B CDL to operate. So we recently hired Cade, a Ledwith, and he has a Class B CDL, or I think he has a Class A CDL, And then Aaron Wilkinson, our lead maintenance operator or worker, also has a Class B CDL. We recently paid for him to go to training, and he went for testing and got his. So we have 2 staff members now. And then as of January, with the new budget, we'll have another individual named Emery come on board, and he also has a CDL. So we'll have 3 people. So we've got triple redundancy on operating that street sweeper.
Very good. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for Mr. Jenkins this evening? Okay, Matt, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about the crash again.
Well,
thanks.
And I have a quick question. Sorry, I have a quick question. How many snow plows do we own? What's our snow situation like?
Snow plows, we own about 5 plows currently. So
Okay.
they attach to our trucks. We've got bracketing underneath, and anything from the larger dump truck all the way down to 3/4 tons. So the main 2 we use are an F350 and an F450 because they can fit a sander and a plow on the front. But we have attached all the way down to a 1/2-ton Dodge, which I think Aaron drives around primarily, but that has a plow on it as well. And we even have a small plow for the Kubota, so we can do sidewalks if necessary in really bad situations.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Great report.
So now we'll get to the adjournment. This concludes our city council meeting this evening. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
Move to
So
adjourn.
moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.